and I'm delighted to have Ben Smurden, who's the director, Leah May, who's playing Tanya, and Nick Bright, who's playing Sergeant Stephen Hughes, all with us in the studio this afternoon. Welcome to BBC Essex, guys.
Good afternoon.
We've just been talking about accents, and we'll come on to that in a little while, because, Ben, this is safe to say that this is Canadian, isn't it, to a degree?
It is, yeah. It's based Canadian soldiers in 2007 during the Iraq War. And the Canadian accents, to say, have been a challenge for the actors, but I would probably say they've nailed it fairly well. I mean, it's something that I don't think... It's quite a hard accent to get on, as we've just discussed. It's not American and it's not English. It's a mix of the two, so...
So we were just saying, weren't we, that Leah, I think they called you Tanya there, so I was getting into character straight away.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be a week early, but I can roll with it.
It's what was it, the word we came out? It's a boot.
A boot and sorry. That's the best you're going to get from me.
How about you, Nick? Have you got any trigger words that you use?
Just hey.
Say it.
There you go.
You're teasing them now. We've got to see. People are going to be queuing to see the show just
to
for
see
this.
the accents. I can't give too much away.
It's like when I do my party piece, which is me Paul O'Grady. Right? O'Grady, straight away, a little bit of a shout, and then the other trigger word for me is dogs. Dogs. Straight in, you see. You've got to have your trigger word, haven't you? This brings you into
said
it.
to me, how are you going to crack the accent? And I remember saying to you right at the beginning of this process, I'm going for a drunk Scarlett Johansson. It's not really worked out, but that was what I was telling myself at the beginning.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the show itself, because this is I suppose this is really intense stuff here, because we are talking about real life experiences, aren't we, Ben?
Absolutely. The play was written by Hannah Moscovitch, who actually was writing for a radio show called Afghanada, which was Canadian soldiers based in Afghanistan. And while she was writing it, she met a lot of soldiers and servicemen, and she got to talking to them, and she read transcripts. And one of the things that she came across was that every single one of them had said that you make a call and you live with that. And a lot of the transcripts she read are inputted into this play. So a lot of it is based on true facts. So the main event that happens, which they all discuss, is a true event, which reading it you wouldn't naturally think of it, but when you actually do your research you think that these things are true, and they are in this play.
It's amazing how much comes through from transcripts, and indeed the verbatim style of theatre, which is always interesting, isn't it? The ums and the ahs in the right place and everything. I mean, how close to that do you stick?
Oh, I think script, the one thing I've noticed about script is it's very punctual. It's got lots of grammar, you know, it does note every single pause, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's very human.
It's the play itself isn't a straightforward play. It's interspersed with interviews and flashbacks. And these scenes, because you're speaking to an unknown interviewer, the punctuation is absolutely key for the actors, which is something I've stressed a lot. And the difference of time in the play, because the interviews will take place as though they are flashbacks. So the scenes, you'll go from a scene into an interview, but this interview could be taken 2 years into the future.
Right.
And as you delve into the play a little bit more, these flashbacks aren't flashbacks in the normal way you think of a GCSE or like an A-level play. It goes into the mental health aspect, that a flashback is being seen by an audience and an interviewer, and especially with things like PTSD and depression and anxiety, these flashbacks are absolutely key for the show, because the script is based primarily on mental health, and it brings mental health awareness very to the forefront of theatre.
And I know that you're doing this in conjunction with a local charity as well. I'm going to talk more about that in just a second or two as well. Talking about the show itself, Leah May, who's playing Tanya. You're a Leon C girl, Leah.
I'm a Leon C girl.
You're a Leon C girl.
Yeah, Leah May from Leon C.
There you are, you see. Always works rather nicely. And we were just talking actually about how theatre in this area is got one big happy family, isn't it, Ben? Because you're talking about different productions that you get involved with, and I think it's the same with you, isn't it, Nick, as well? You go from company to company, really.
I started off, I tried to do professional acting, went drama school and things, but then got involved in different groups around the society. So yeah, I dabble in Shakespeare, musical theatre, and now contemporary theatre as well.
Yeah. Well, contemporary theatre is an interesting one, because it's the kind of theatre where people talk after the performance, particularly about what they've seen. And I suppose that's really, as a director, that's the tricky part, isn't it? Because you have to make sure that all the scenes, and you talked there about flashbacks and things like that, they all make sense so that people are quite aware of what's going on and when it's happening.
Absolutely. I mean, theatre was originally originated, if you want to say, for entertainment, but as it's progressed, it's now become a more of a learning experience for people. And I think when it comes to contemporary theatre, it is an opportunity for people to not only enjoy it, but also to take something away from it as well, which I think This Is War does. It gives you a lesson to say, okay, we're going to show you something, and it's up to you if you want to listen to it or not, which is the beauty of theatre, because you can go in, and it's a bit like films. You can take yourself out of yourself and listen to something else, and you can forget everything else, and then when you come out, you still talk about it. And especially with theatre, because it's so close to you and so in your face, which is another form of theatre, in your face theatre, it gives you the opportunity to actually take away and think about it like you would a film, like a critic would, for example.
Yeah, it's a great way of finding out things that you might not have known about previously, particularly in this instance, the Canadian soldiers in Afghanistan. Let's talk about the characters as well. Leah, you played Tanya. Tell us a little bit about her.
Master Corporal. So Tanya, she's a very independent woman. She's very damaged by what she's seen on her previous tour. I think there was an incident that she carries with her. So she carries, I think my character carries the main form of the guilt and the resentment, and she's very much past it. She's suffering very badly from PTSD. So she can't forgive herself for what happened. And she makes choices about how she can handle that and live with herself, and she gets very much caught up in the whirlwind that is the trauma, and the relationships with the other characters are very toxic, and she's very damaged, my character, I think.
Yeah.
But she's feisty, very feisty, a lot of anger.
Let's talk a little bit about Sergeant Stephen Hughes. Nick, that's your character. Tell us a little bit about him.
Okay, so he's the sergeant, so he's in charge of the group. And a bit like what Ben said earlier, where you make a decision, you live with it. My character is certainly the guy that makes the decisions and has to live with it, and that's what he struggles with, and he can't find the balance. His personal life is also he's struggling with as well, and being in this environment brings out the worst in him. And it builds up all these different scenarios, and the flashbacks you see involves my character a lot and the decisions that he makes. So he always goes about how he wants to do right by his guys, but sometimes his decisions are not always the right decision.
Yeah, I think
in that environment, though, what do you do?
Yeah, and this is a big thing, isn't it? We're talking about PTSD now, and at least there is some awareness of it now. But it's amazing. We were talking on the show a few weeks ago about a book that was set during the First World War, and those soldiers that did come back, of which there weren't many, were suffering from what they were then calling shell shock. But actually was PTSD, but it wasn't prescribed, so nobody knew what it was. And many in the First and the Second World War lived through the rest of their lives, undiagnosed, expected to just carry on. And after the things they'd seen and what they'd been through, they couldn't cope. And nobody was there to help.
Home with them for the rest of their life.
I mean, especially with it now. I mean, depression, anxiety, mental health in general in young people is thankfully it's now in the public eye a lot more than it was, say, 20 years ago. I mean, with I think the Royal Family, I think it's Heads Together, they released their initiative, and I think I was reading this morning, doing a bit of research for today. I think it's decreased by 20% in the last 10 years of mental health undiagnosed in young people, because obviously especially young toddlers, it's undiagnosed because obviously you can't know, but it's decreased by 20%, which is what the initiative is for, and at least it's now in the public eye.
Let's talk a bit about the charity that you've teamed up with for this as well. Tell us some more about it, Ben.
Yes, it's a charity called SAFA, which is the Armed Forces charity. They support ex-servicemen and women and current servicemen and women with their lives in and outside of the army. So if they have come back from, say, Iraq, they support their family and them for as long as they need. And I think they're the longest serving charity that operates for all the armed forces, I think, in the world. And reading some stories, we've met a couple of them, and we're also speaking to one of the regional directors tomorrow, and I've spoken to her on the phone, and she's told me some amazing stories of all the people that she's met and the lives they've changed. We're having a retiring collection for them after the show every night through the week, and we're also having, it's quite an honour actually, we're having ex-servicemen and I think some current servicemen as well coming to watch the show one night. I'm not entirely sure when it will be, but it will be such an honour to have them, especially with a play like this.
I think it's definitely an honour, but it's very scary.
Do you think it's better that you two actors don't know when they're in until afterwards?
I don't like to know who's in the audience. I think even though if you really look, you can spot faces, but I think I just look blankly into the distance. I don't want to know who's there. Some actors do like knowing who's in their audience. Do you?
No.
I don't either.
See, I do, because we can prepare for it. We just don't tell you anyway.
I think it was we had Jason Manford on the show when he was in, I think it was The Producers or something, and he was telling me that he was in the audience one night and he could see from where he stood that Mel Brooks was in the audience. Can you imagine the pressure? It's just,
judgment
of all the people, But I mean, for this particular play as well, because it is, really taking a, really strong, a really candid look into the lives of people who have been through this. Of course, it makes it even more real, doesn't it, in many ways, for people watching it, particularly.
Absolutely. I mean, when I first came across the script, I must say by accident, I was looking for something that was war-based and something that had a bit of mental health aspect, because that's something that I've always been passionate about, that I've always tried to, say, look, this is new, this is something we've got to keep an eye out for, we need to watch this. And I came across this script, I read it, and I thought, this is absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. And my initiative with this play was that not only do I want to create a brilliant piece of theatre with amazing actors, I wanted to give something to say, this is different. It's not been seen before. There's a reason for that. So I'm very fortunate, and I think we all are, to have the ability to perform on the Palace stage in the Dixon Studio. And we're very fortunate to be able to do that. And I think, well, why don't we? Why don't we do something that no one has done before, and something that maybe is slightly different because it is interesting and because no one else has seen it before?
It's definitely a challenge.
Oh, definitely a challenge.
It's definitely something that Southend potentially hasn't seen before.
No, I think
the whole war thing.
I think it is. I think when you were speaking with Samuel French, who are the distributors, I think this is the first time this has been performed in the UK. I'm 99% sure it has. But yeah, I mean, it will be very, very, very hard. It will be a challenge, but it will be worth it.
It's modern war as well, so it's relatable current affairs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's obviously there has been war done in Southend before, and it's been done beautifully and respectfully, and been an absolute honour to watch. But I think with this one, it's modern day war. It's Afghanistan. So I think it's very relatable.
There is some laughs in it as well.
Don't get me wrong.
There is some laughs. It's not all doom and gloom.
No, there is
a lot of army banter.
Banter.
Well, it's the sweet and the sour, isn't it? I suppose then we were talking about that earlier on. About you have to put something else in there as well to get the whole thing to flow, and of course the Dixon Studio, great for somewhere like this because you've got that intimate feel about it as well.
Very close, very close.
Absolutely,
great stuff. Right, let's get the details then. If people want to see it, when's it all happening then?
Yes, well, it's at the Dixon Studio, the Palace Theatre in Westcliff-on-Sea. It'll be from Wednesday night, the 5th of June, running at 7:45, and we'll be running till Saturday matinee with a 2:45 performance and a 7:45 performance. So that's the first week in June.
Brilliant.